I'll let you answer some of those in a minute, though. But so, Lonnie, let's just go back. So you are pushing that Manu and saying that he hasn't done a good job, that you want to do better. Can you just talk more specifically in terms of, first of all, is there anything in the county that you think is going well? So what would be like 3 things that you think the county is doing well, and then really specifically how you would change it? So you are saying you're critical now, but how would you change it?
One of the things that comes to mind is I know I met with Robert Ratner, and I feel like he's doing an amazing job in terms of helping us get on our feet. We now are creating centers where everyone that comes in through homelessness goes to a navigation center, and so that's centralized. And I think that that's the direction that we need to go, so that you don't have all these little spurs that people are trying to figure out where all your homeless are being helped. So you have support services, and that's going to ramp up even better when we start to get the money from the state with the Cal Ames. Hopefully, folks will vote on Proposition 1 in March that will help bring a lot more money. Let's see. I'm really appreciative, given the fight by about 74% of our community members and the vote for Measure D, that a majority of our RTC members are now moving towards looking at rail, which I think is really important to our environment. It's really important to a large percentage of our community members. I would say that that hasn't really been supported fully by the incumbent, so I don't feel like the incumbent really reflects the greater percentage of the community. And let me think, what's another thing that's going well in the community? I think that there's more awareness in the community, and I think that this is something that I would really serve to help bring awareness about the importance of how we serve our homeless community and bring more affordable housing. I served on the housing element, and that is really important. I'm hearing a lot of people say that they do want to see more development around transit-oriented corridors so that you have access and easy walkability, 15-minute walkable communities. And I really support that. And so those are 3 things that I'm really excited to see starting to happen.
Okay, and you didn't answer the 3 specific things that you want to do differently.
That I want to do differently. Yeah. Okay, sorry about that.
Quick.
Yes, I would actually really like to, just at the very top, really push much harder with the rail and trail. We've already got full funding. The state of California gave us $115 million to build the trail, and the incumbent voted against it. So I would really push to bring that trail in right away. We've already got the money for it to go all the way to Aptos. I'd also push for rail. I really would push for senior services. Again, seniors have come to me and said they've really felt left behind, so I would really serve our seniors, and I would really serve our school district. Our school district have said the incumbent, they don't even see him. He doesn't show up for events, and so that's something that I really support, Cradle to Career, and projects that support our kids. Thank you.
Okay. And we'll get back more into specifics, exactly how you would do that in a minute. I'm going to let Manu respond. But Manu, I'm just going to also ask you this, that 4 years ago you came in with lots of ideas, and a sort of similar question is, looking back, what have you learned 4 years later? What have you learned? What maybe 3 things, I asked for 3 things, what 3 things would you maybe do differently, or any decisions that you regret? And you can also respond to some of what Lonnie said.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm glad Ms. Faulkner approves of everything we're doing at the county to address homelessness. We are down 22% there. One of the first actions I took on the board was to commit the county to doing more to address homelessness, because it can't just be the city of Santa Cruz responding. We know that we need to act collaboratively to address this. That's why I worked with Ryan Coonerty. We introduced a motion to commit the county to building 120 units in the unincorporated area. We're close to doing 100 now between projects like Veterans Village, Park Haven Plaza, transitional behavioral health housing that we're going to be building soon. So we really are making good on that promise. Of course, it's been great to hear Ms. Faulkner come to some of our Metro board meetings and speak so approvingly about what we're doing with Metro to ramp up service. The Youth Cruise Free program we rolled out, where we've seen a 400% increase in youth riding the bus because now they can get on without any change for free. So, what I've learned, I think I've already mentioned in a couple of ways, right? Which is, one, we are so constrained by all the overlapping issues of jurisdiction and the budget. I mean, how can you get anything done if you can't make any decisions unilaterally and you have very little, if no money to do it? what I think you asked then, kind of what I'll do next. I mean, I alluded to some of these things, but I've been working on trying to improve our planning department since day one as well. First going for some of the little stuff, we made ADUs under 750 square feet, essentially free to build, no permit costs. We created pre-approved ADU plans that you can pull off the website and go put in your backyard and get approval with very little overhead. And actually, most recently, I created a third-party plan check program where you can bring your own plan checker. So, and the most important thing I learned in doing that was that we actually have a certain amount of immunity as the county. We don't have to make sure every single line of code is met. We can actually approve those permits a little bit more easily, and that's what I'll push forward in a second term.
Okay, this one's coming back at you, Manu, because it's every other, right? It's your turn now. I do want to ask about this, and it seems odd to me because Measure D has already been decided, but it does seem that, and of course the Regional Transportation Commission is working on its feasibility studies right now on the rail, but Measure D does seem to be hanging around. It seems to be part of this race, and I just want to ask how you explain that. Like, what's going on? Why is Measure D, why are we still talking about Measure D?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, I think my opponent should be thanking me for Measure D because it did help bring a certain amount of clarity to how to move forward on this issue. When I ran the first time, I said, hey, we're spending a heck of a lot of money on studies, and people should vote on this issue. And we created that opportunity for people to vote, and since the vote, I've truly honored it, right? I voted to move forward with the passenger rail environmental impact report. My opponent accused me of holding up the rail trail. I think there was one vote where I said, hey, we better look at this environmental impact report a little bit closer because we're talking about taking out a lot of trees, and I think we need to consider it carefully. But look, if I wanted to hold up the rail trail, I could have done way more. I mean, rather, I supported it by making sure that we had $1.5 million in discretionary funds for the first district committed, so that we could pull down that $100 million in state grants, and have really helped move it forward in every way. I think the real question is going forward. I mean, my opponent seems to think that the thing is fully funded. We got $100 million from the state, but we better look out for some cost overruns. I think it's going to be maybe at least $30 million more than that $100 million we got. If you don't believe me, look at the city's project over the harbor. It was bid at about, engineer's estimate, I want to say $24 million. Only bid came back at $57 million. So we're seeing hugely expensive projects come in. And when you do that much design and engineering on a trail next to the tracks, there's going to be challenges. So, we've already learned that you can't build the trail south of Rio Del Mar Boulevard with the current money we have. You're not going to connect to Watsonville. I'm curious how my opponent would deal with some of those issues.
So you can answer that, Lonnie, and you can also answer this question, is Measure D still part of this debate?
I want to talk about cost overruns. The Park Avenue project for Project Home Key that was approved and got millions of dollars. From what I understand now, they've cried, I read in a recent report, that they don't have enough money, so that they've not done good planning, and it sounds like this project, I'm not sure how that's going to go through, but from what I understand, they're asking for more money, so I'm really curious to hear about that project. But in terms of the conversation around Measure D, first of all, we spent a lot of money fighting Measure D, and the citizens spent a lot of money running Measure D. And I think it's a big waste of money because we already voted on Proposition 116. I can show you the language is very clear. It says that we voted for passenger rail. We've actually paid a lot in taxes towards passenger rail. All of the work that we did over 10 years that landed at the purchase of the rail in 2012 were fully in support of the public owning passenger rail. And then right after we became owners, these two groups, actually it was one group called the Aptos Rail Trail Investor Group that tried to privatize it. And then that very private group then broke into Trail Now and Greenway that then tried to basically totally change the narrative around what we were trying to do with this project. We then had engineers that in 2014 we approved the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail, which was a part of it, trail beside the rail, and all of this was going through and working very well. So I would say that the efforts of Greenway, and of course Koenig was the executive director of Greenway, and so those efforts have cost us tremendous amount of time and tremendous amount of money that we really could be using. We could have those things now, today.
What about? I mean, that was before. I mean, I'm super grateful for the background. But what about now? Why is this still a question now?
Well, it's still a question because you don't have a champion really standing behind it. You know, I've talked to and I've listened to our state representative, the chair of the California Transportation Commission, and he was very clear. Santa Cruz, you made a promise. For the money that we gave you to buy the rail and to build the trail, you need to do the promise. So we don't have a champion in that regard in terms of the incumbent. He is not championing that cause, and in fact, in June, put on the Board of Supervisors to add yet another component to the trail. It adds more time and more money. In May, he voted against moving forward something about trees, but the Greenway Trail, last I read, was a 26-foot wide trail, which actually would have destroyed a lot more trees than the proposed 12 to 16 foot, mostly 12 to 16 foot trail that we now have in progress.
So, Manu, you want to answer that? Are you not a proponent of the rail?
I actually went to Sacramento and helped and lobbied for additional funds so that we could move forward with the next segment of the passenger rail environmental impact report. You know, our community asked for $16 million, and we got $3.5 million. So this idea that there's just an unlimited amount of state money out there, and that if we just lobby them harder, somehow we would get all this money, I think is a little bit ridiculous, especially as we look into deficit year here at the state. And of course, that money that we did get, that $3.5 million, was from the good year. Now, of course, the money that we did get from the state in a good proportion was the $3.8 million for our metro system, right? And you know, look, I love trains. I actually worked for the German rail system right after graduating from college, voted for high-speed rail, was excited about the fact that we were going to get local rail here. And it was just when I saw how stalled out the high-speed rail program has gotten statewide, when I realized how narrow the corridor is in this community, I honestly just had concerns whether or not we'd ever be able to get it done. Now, we're doing the study now. We'll see if it's possible. But I think we need to make sure that we look at other options to get a dedicated transit facility in this community. That's why I'm so excited about what we're doing with Metro and keep pushing forward on building a dedicated bus on shoulder lane on the highway.
Can I make I'd love to respond to that.
Then we're going to get through the questions, but this is good.
You know, as far as us receiving $3.8 million for the next step, I just have to say that I feel like the state is looking at us and they're saying, look, we told you to do the thing and you're not doing the thing the way we told you, so we're going to not give you money. The bus metro has been doing the thing that they were told to do. They're doing it and they're getting the money. If we do what we're being asked to do, we will get the money. SB 125 now is allotting $4 billion to rail and trail, just like ours. Monterey is actually moving forward with building rail from Monterey to Pajaro. We need to be a part of that system that will bring us to Pajaro so we can connect to the State Rail Network. The State Rail Network has a plan. It's called the State Rail Plan. It's the #1 priority for addressing the climate crisis in our state. And the reason why that's so important is it will connect us by rail to the rest of the state. Part of the plan means they have money allotted for the plan. So, but we actually need to collaborate with them and not oppose them. And right now, the incumbent is seen as an opposition at the state level because he hasn't been following the plan. Thank you.
All right, let's move on a little bit from that point. The second thing that's hovering over this debate, it seems to me, is the ghost of John Leopold. So I just want to address that
He's
a little
alive.
bit. I mean, he's alive, obviously. Sorry, obviously he's alive. But I mean, it feels oddly personal. It feels like this is a revamp of the last election. So Manu, I just want to know, is there some carryover from your race with John Leopold?
Well, you know, Jody, I think there is. Well, first of all, I think, since we were just talking about Measure D, I think this is a good transition. I think ultimately the reason voters elected me by a very wide margin, about 57%, over a 3-term incumbent, was they realized that we need to do things differently. And they trusted in me to bring a fresh set of eyes and ideas and creativity to the office, and that's exactly what I've done. Now, I think the other piece here is, frankly, a little bit about the entrenched political establishment in this county. And you can see that much in the way that the fundraising has gone for this race. 58% of all the donations over $100 for my campaign have come from the 1st District. Whereas my opponent here, the majority of donations over $100 for her are coming from District 3, the city of Santa Cruz. And so this is largely, I think, about the political establishment trying to re-exert control over the 1st District. I think that is a little bit about where this comes from. I've always been a little bit more independent. I didn't honestly, come up through the system as some have. So I think that's kind of the power struggle that we're seeing here.
So Lonnie, why don't you take a little look at this and just talk a little bit about John Leopold. Obviously, you've received a lot of endorsements that he also received. How are you different from him? How do you see his role in this race? And I hope he's watching tonight, obviously. It's not a ghost, but I meant that metaphorically.
Well, I just want to say that the incumbent ran on a promise of getting things quickly done through the planning and getting housing much more easy. And I would say we still only have 60 houses built from the CZU fire out of almost 1,000 houses. How is that actually helping the system? Because I haven't seen that. He also ran on safe streets, and as being a cyclist, I'm also a cyclist. I coached kids for 7 years, and honestly, if you look at the statistics, the safety on the streets is a lot worse. You can't just throw down green paint. We know that because what that does, it makes cyclists think they're safe, and it makes drivers not see the cyclists. And so really, we need bollards and we need protective bike lanes. We also need to protect We also need to protect our pedestrians. We have a skyrocketing situation of pedestrians that are getting hit by cars. I work on the Community Traffic Safety Coalition. So how that relates to John Leopold, and I just feel like we are different in that my focus is different. And I'm going to look more at really a lot of the things that the community members have said are important to them and work side by side with them. I'm not a top-down leader, and I'd say a lot of people, even county and union members that have come to me and said, you haven't, with the incumbent, this top-down leader, as opposed to someone who's willing to get into the grass and get into the muck and say, I'm going to get my boots dirty and my hands dirty and work with you. And that's the kind of leader that I am. Having grown up in rural communities, I'm used to actually getting in the muck. But I'm a very different leader. But I would say that I'm similar to John in that I talked to a lot of people in campaigning, and they really miss John. I have to say a lot of, and not everybody's loved. You can't be loved by everybody. You're going to make some people upset, but a lot of people really miss John's leadership because he was really there in so many ways.
Okay, thanks. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah.
We'll move on.
Sure.
We have lots of substantive issues, not just
very shortly here. I think another reason why the people elected me in 2020 was because I came with a lot of specific suggestions on things I was going to do. And now, granted, I inherited decades and decades of problems in the making, right? And I'm sorry, I wish I could have made a bigger difference on all of them in pretty much the 3 years and 1 month that I've now been in office. I think we've made some great strides. Happy to talk about those in more detail. But what I think, similar to my opponent and Supervisor Leopold, is they don't talk about any specifics. I mean, even the earlier question you asked, I didn't hear a specific proposal brought forward. I mean, on the safety issue on our streets, I have worked directly with neighborhoods. Yes, only some green paint in places, but heck, it's better than nothing. I mean, every time we revamp a street, I've worked closely with our Public Works Department to improve it as best as possible given the space allowed. And you're going to see protected bike lanes going in the whole length of Soquel Drive from Harbor to Aptos here this coming year.